When the Zambia Revenue Authority was established in 1994, the mission of the Revenue House was and is still to optimize and sustain revenue collection through integrated, efficient, cost-effective and transparent systems which are professionally managed to meet the expectations of all stakeholders. ZRA has constituted an integrity committee in its department. This is an effort to curb bad administrations in its operations. This is what we're discussing tonight. Join me after this short break as I introduce my guests tonight from the Zambia Revenue Authority. Welcome back. Commissioner Moses SHUKO, the Commissioner of Domestic Taxes at the Zambia Revenue Authority, is my guest tonight, and we are discussing the integrity committees. Let's get right into it. When it comes to understanding that your core business is revenue collection, why is integrity such an important issue for the Zambia Revenue Authority?
Thank you, Francisca, and good evening, viewers. As you mentioned, Zambia Revenue Authority is charged with the responsibility of collecting revenue. And that collection of revenue is expected to be done in a professional way. Okay? So now, because of that, it entails that the process through which we collect these revenues must be acceptable to the public. Okay? And that entails that they must be done with integrity. Without integrity, the revenue administration is compromised. What do I mean by that? We are dealing with value. Money is value. And so as we collect the money, it is expected that we collect the money from everyone who is eligible to pay that money. And also ensure that when we collect that money, we account for it until it gets into the treasury. Okay? Now, for you to do that, it means you must have processes, systems, people, and procedures that can be relied on. Okay? So from the point of Zambia Revenue Authority, we realize that the mandate that we have is very important. And we know that we must give public confidence that the processes that we are using and the people that we are using and the system that we are using can be relied upon. And we can only do that if we demonstrate that these are done with integrity in mind. Of course, when you talk about integrity, the focus mainly is on the people. Okay, that basically must have the integrity.
All right. So now when you've put this integrity committee in place, what are some of the measures that you've put to enhance its operations?
Okay. The integrity committee that has been put in place is part of what I may term institutionalizing the corruption prevention processes within the institution. As you might be aware, under the National Anti-Corruption Policy, there was an initiative that entailed establishing integrity committees both in public institutions as well as private. And Zambia Revenue Authority was one of those institutions that was identified in the 8 institutions that were deemed to be vulnerable to corruption by the nature of the business that we do. And so the integrity committee was established to ensure that we establish within the institution a mechanism that will help to identify corruption vulnerabilities and put in place mechanisms to reduce those corruption vulnerabilities. So the Integrity Committee in Zambia Revenue Authority basically works towards that. We work in close collaboration with the Anti-Corruption Commission to ensure that we assess the various processes that we have in place, the various systems and the various procedures to ensure that opportunities of corruption are eliminated as much as possible. That we do by ensuring that of course, people must be aware. When we talk about corruption, what is it? People must understand what you're talking about. Okay, so what we do as part of the Integrity Committee is that we have got a three-pronged approach. We deal with what we call prevention, education, as well as enforcement. Yes, so we have various activities that we implement as Zambia Revenue Authority. But the most important thing is that we ensure that we secure the revenue that we collect on behalf of government. So all these processes are meant to ensure that we can give credibility to all these processes that we have, that the revenue that we are collecting is properly accounted for to the government.
And who is constituted in this integrity committee?
Okay. The Zambia Revenue Authority Integrity Committee is made up of 5 senior members of management, We have got a chairman, apparently Commissioner of Domestic Taxes for now. Then we've got four other members, and then a full-time secretariat. Okay, so to ensure that we implement the annual corruption prevention program. And for us in ZRA, the anti-corruption prevention is at a strategic level. That's why this integrity committee is basically part of the strategic planning meeting. And also, it has got a dedicated budget to ensure that these measures are implemented. We've got an action plan for the year to implement, and it's treated like any other activities that we have. It's subject to audit, it's subject to evaluation to ensure that what we are planning to do, we actually execute. And that's how serious this process is taken in our institution.
You're watching Nightlive, and you can get interactive with us. You can call us on the number that's on your screen. The number is 0976 779 363. We'll be able to take live calls in case you have any questions here for the Commissioner for Domestic Taxes, Mr. Moses SHUKO. So now, with the other internal mechanisms already in place, why was the ZRA Integrity Committee formed? How long has it been running?
The ZRA Integrity Committee was established in 2006. Like I mentioned, it was one of the first 8 integrity committees to be established in line with government policy of ensuring that the fight against corruption is not only left in the hands of the anti-corruption, but it is institutionalized in the various institutions. And also, when you look at the fight against corruption, it is can be better be dealt with, especially when you talk about the preventative measures by the people that are actually in the institution. Okay, because if you look at anti-corruption is an external to ZRA, so they may not have that capacity to actually policy everything that is going on. So it was felt that the effective way of fighting corruption was actually, in addition to what the anti-corruption is doing, is to ensure that within the institutions themselves, you build that capacity through the integrity committees so that they can identify areas of corruption vulnerabilities and put in mechanisms to prevent and, where possible, eliminate opportunities for corruption. So there are other processes in these institutions like internal audit and other processes. But it is actually important that you have specific team that deals with issues of morality. Process of decision making, these affect people, and people can make decisions, and the basis of those decisions may lack integrity. So you need to have people that are within the institution to understand how the business is run, and they can effectively identify areas that are very vulnerable. For instance, I can give an example for ZRA. Issues of, for a long time we have been dealing with issues of valuation of motor vehicle, for instance, where there were a lot of complaints around that area, that the process of valuation was creating an opportunity for people to solicit for lower values, but high value vehicles, for instance. And so to deal with that aspect, the Revenue Authority brought about a standardization of values. So we have basically removed that opportunity for people to be negotiating.
Because everybody even knows.
Everyone is actually put in the open. By the time you are ordering your vehicle, you actually know the taxes that you are supposed to pay. So there is no need to come to ZRA and start negotiating with anybody. So that is one way in which you actually eliminate that opportunity in the process of our institution to ensure that there is no more that opportunity for corruption. And so we have many other processes that we undertake. And so it's very important for us within the institution as we work to observe those areas, and we can effectively actually deal with them. And so the Integrity Committee it supplements the efforts of other institutions that are meant to ensure that you promote corporate good governance in these institutions.
And how's that been working so far? Looking at, there's sometimes people will say it's not easy to know what is happening around that, especially when you have illiterate. There's, when we talk about people who are illiterate and they would want to know what's happening within the ZRA and how they can access, some of these services, and knowing that their monies are safe. How have you been able to, spread the word around to say you can, believe in us, we have an integrity committee, so if you want this process A, B, C, D, you can get information. Okay.
We've done that by ensuring that we implement the framework that I talked about, which is three-pronged. There's a lot of education that we do. If you look at, we have got brochures, we have put adverts, we actually, this particular month, actually, September, for Zambia Revenue Authority, we call it an integrity month.
Okay.
And so you have heightened activities. As I'm talking, other people are in various provinces trying to talk about these integrity issues. For our staff, what we do every year, we subject them to these integrity awareness processes.
Okay.
Those that are joining the Revenue Authority, we run them through as part of induction. We educate them about these issues, about our code of ethics, and many others that support what we do in trying to fight or reduce opportunities of corruption. We also have other programs for our stakeholders. As you know, corruption is not just a one-sided issue. We have the public out there. So we also carry out the sensitization program for the public. And that sometimes we do with other integrity committees from other institutions like RATSA, police, immigration, and others, just to ensure that we bring about public awareness. Apart from that, if you look at our website and many other things that we have put in place, we emphasize that that publicity goes out. We have got suggestion boxes in place. We've got a lot of publications that point to how you can actually communicate with Zambia Revenue Authority and report all manner of maladministration, corrupt practices, and many other things. We've also got an internal affairs department within the Revenue Authority, which is charged with the responsibility of ensuring that cases of malpractice or fraud or corruption that are reported against ZRA staff are actually investigated by that unit, and where officers are found wanting, the disciplinary measures take into account. If there are issues of criminality or other issues are referred to relevant institutions like the Anti-Corruption or Drug Enforcement Commission and many others. So basically we have that mechanism which we also publicize, that people are aware how they can report to us and how these matters are basically dealt with. We've got publicized, I'll give you the number that we have, the emails, we have got suggestion boxes all over our offices that people can actually use to communicate with us and report all manner of perceived malpractice.
And how does the Internal Affairs Committee work together with the Integrity Committee to ensure that you carry out the mandate of this committee?
Yes, what gives credence to activities is that when people report, they expect that you take action. Okay. Now, the Integrity Committee responsibility is to receive these complaints, evaluate them, and refer them to the various units. There are matters that are of a procedural nature, for instance, where people are complaining about a process which is taking too long. Those ones, of course, will refer them to the respective commissioners so that they can review those processes and ensure that we have the efficiency that we talk about in place. There are matters which have to do with malpractice. For instance, somebody soliciting for bribes. So those are matters that will refer to the internal affairs because, mind you, when a report comes, we do not have facts. We have to investigate. So our internal affairs is responsible to ensure that those reports that come of that nature, they actually gather the facts around to establish that whether that allegation is actually true or not. And once it's established that it's true, then the internal affairs, of course, will generate a report recommending whatever action must be done. If they recommend, for instance, disciplinary measures, there is a disciplinary process that we have in Zambia Revenue Authority, which now handle that issue. The person will be called, they will give their story, they will give their, of course, first of all, they will be charged by their supervisor, then they will respond, and then they will be called for a sitting where they will now appear before a panel and explain their side. And through that process, if it's established that this particular officer was actually wrong, the various measures will be effected. We have got the disciplinary code, which spells out exactly what must be done to you when you commit a particular offense. So that process is followed. And of course, if somebody is not happy, they can appeal. There's an principal appeals, which will review that case. And if still somebody is not happy, then they can go now to other institutions to present their cases as such. So the Internal Affairs Department is an investigative wing that focuses on investigating matters to do with the ZRA staff that have been alleged to be involved in any manner of malpractice.
And how's been the response from the general public, having done, all this sensitization? For instance, have you put up, since you've said you've put up all this publication, how are people taking it, especially after you changed, for instance, the issue of the values for the vehicles? If somebody is importing a car, they usually had these middle people, but now how is the relationship between the public and direct with the officers?
Oh yes, we are very happy that the public actually have been reporting a lot of cases we receive a lot of cases. Some come in form of compliments, of course. They are happy about certain things that we have done. Others are complaints about things that may not be working well. And of course, others just make suggestions of areas they feel we can improve and things like that. So in terms of public, I think we are interacting very well. We receive a lot of information through our suggestion boxes. We also receive a lot of information through letters. Some people just start to write letters. Some indicate who they are. Some also indicate that they just put it as anonymous. Others drop an email because we've provided those emails that they can send the email to. Others walk in. Of course, we have publicized that our secretariat is on the 4th floor of Revenue House. So people know. Some of them walk in to explain and report. So because of those systems that we have put in, and we actually acknowledge every report that comes, we acknowledge. If you send an email, we'll respond that we have received and we are looking at it. If it's a matter that requires you to be taught about what has happened, of course we'll do. And so because of that, a lot of people have been encouraged to actually bring out matters that they feel should be brought to the attention of the Integrity Committee.
How effective have this system, been, especially when it comes to the issue of digitization? We've seen in the recent past you've introduced a lot of, online applications, but there's some people who still, they may not be literate enough. They'll still think maybe I need to come to ZRA, find those middlemen, or find someone inside to help me with us. How effective has the system been? Is it 100% on a scale of, if you want to rate it that way, on a scale of percentages?
Oh, yes. If you look at automation in general, automation that we do in Zambia Revenue Authority is meant to make systems simpler and easy. For instance, when we automate the filing of returns, for instance, it entails that you will not be coming there to ZRA. You can actually go on the system and file your return. Now, what we are doing there is that we are reducing the congestion, because part of the opportunities for corruption are when processes are taking too long. Now, when there's a crowd, of course, everyone desires to be served in the shortest possible time. So sometimes that is what creates this issue of the desire to jump queues, the desire to be served first before the people that came earlier, and those people begin to give you monies and things like that, or to ask people to do them a favor. Now, our idea in trying to ensure that we automate as much as possible our processes is to ensure that we simplify them and we make it easy. We make them cost effective. Where you are supposed to jump on a bus and come to our office, you do it from wherever you are. But of course, we recognize that in our midst, there are people that may not come on board in terms of using the technology. Yes. So when we automate, as we are automating, we do not do away with the manual processes. So there's still room for people to be attended to like that. And also what we did to facilitate transacting through the digital platforms is to establish bureaus. And we make our officers available to actually help these that may not know. But of course, there's also that segment of people that have decided to use the agents. But so what we ensure is that the agents do not exploit the people that they are doing their work for. For instance, when we were doing this issue of tipping registration, at some point there were a lot of people that basically were coming because of the deadline. So what we noticed that some people started charging. They were charging as much as 100 kwacha for tipping registration, but tipping registration is free. So those people who didn't know, they ended up paying those agents. And because these agents, sometimes it's very difficult to distinguish who is ZRA and who is an agent. So they will make payment and then they'll say ZRA is charging for tipping. Okay, so we ensure that we deal with that situation. That when somebody is being charged, he must make a conscious decision to pay for that service. And it must be very clear what he's paying for. Okay. If you're paying for consultants or help to file a return, it's different from paying for a return. Okay. Because the returns are free. Most of our services are free. So we ensure that we educate the public that our forms, when you are getting any form from us, we don't charge for any form. Okay. If you are registering, we don't charge for registration. And so we disseminate this information to ensure that the public are not exploited by anybody.
You spoke about something that caught my attention. Of course, everything that you've been saying is very, very valid. But you spoke about something that stood out for me. When you talk about people wanting to be served first, at ZRA, you find there's lots of queues. In that queue, you find probably there's an expectant mother, there's an elderly person. do you have any policy to ensure that such people are attended to first and they don't have to really follow the queue, because they might get desperate and pay somebody to stand to do a service for them? Is there anything deliberate to ensure that such people are served as quickly as possible?
Yes, certainly. We are alive to the environment in which we are. So our officers, our front officers are trained to ensure that as people are queuing and coming, they basically observe what type of people are there. They could be the elderly, they could be expectant mothers, they could be... So there are certain conditions that you see that obviously it wouldn't make sense to leave them on a queue for a long time. And so those are isolated and managed. If you notice, what we have done is we have been implementing the queue management system. If you come to our office here in Ndola, Kitwe, it's basically to ensure that people actually come, and when you come to our center, you basically get a number. So you queue. And until your number is called, that's when you go for a service. Okay? So that also is meant to ensure that we eliminate those issues of people who are coming late but wanting to be served first and trying to skip queues and things like that. So there are those mechanisms that we are putting in place. But of course, we ensure that the manager in charge of front office, from one time to time, they basically observe what is going on to ensure that any special cases that need to be attended to, they are basically dealt with.
All right. And under a minute, just tell us about the last report that we heard on the corruption index. ZRA was on the top 10. What is the status on that?
Oh yes, for us, I think we are happy that what has come out in the last report is that initially we used to be rated as very high in terms of bribe, receiving bribe and all those kind of things. So what has happened now is that the latest report has indicated that ZRA has improved in terms of putting in mechanisms. Instances of corruption or bribes and things like that, they have reduced.
So you're no longer on the top 10.
So we are no longer on the top 10. And that is basically because of these measures that the Integrity Committee has been putting in place. And we believe that the measures that we've been putting in place over the years are actually yielding positive results.
All right, and we end our program on that positive note, where ZRA is no longer on the top 10 index of the corruption report. My guest tonight has been Commissioner Moses SHUKO, who is the Commissioner for Domestic Taxes at the Zambia Revenue Authority. And tonight we were focusing on integrity committees at ZRA. That's all we had time for you. Thank you so much for the pleasure of your company. I'm Francesca Phiri-Banda. Good night.